minutes, and Carter and I will both present our arguments, deliberate on them a little bit, and then we can open it up for everyone.
This is
I
going
just
to
have
be
to say,
moderated, right?
Oh.
That would be you, Merlin, right? And you're going to explain the rules before, right? Cool.
I'm ready, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, no rush.
Now recording.
Yeah, it was decided that I would take the first round. I am ready. Okay, let's go. Is routinely ex male infant mutilation or permissible culture/medical practice? Hello, my name is Ronan, and I am here to argue my point of view regarding male circumcision and why I believe it is a permissible medical practice. I will try to show the audience that the benefits outweigh the risk and why I believe circumcision should remain a permissible medical practice. It is important to me because I have a unique experience with circumcision to understand my point of view. Circumcision isn't entirely bad. Yes, it is body mutilation, but in some required medical procedure. Some reasons why it is required: balanitis, swelling of the postitis, inflammation of the tip of the foreskin, or inflammation of the tip and foreskin of the penis, phimosis, inability to return a retracted foreskin to its original phimosis, inability to retract foreskin. Circumcision is the oldest known medical. It's been around for almost 3,000 years, and the benefits and some benefits include it makes it easier. Okay, one second.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah, anytime someone robots, just quickly let them know, and usually airplane mode on and off, leaving the room, coming back, etc. fixes that, but always let someone know. I can't tell if it's on my end, so you guys let them know.
Sure, no worries.
Can you hear me better?
I'm not sure.
We'll see over time here.
Where I left off, I suppose. The last thing I'm doing is circumcision is the oldest known medical practice, been around for 3,000 years, and some benefits include easier hygiene. It makes it easier to wash your penis, decreased risk of UTIs, prevention of penile problems, decreased STDs, and decreased risk of penile cancer. Also, along, and I'll explain a little bit. So in Africa, circumcision is recommended for boys or men to reduce the risk of certain transmitted infections. In some cases, circumcision improvement in sex life. A 2009 study done in Cape Town, Africa showed that women whose partner was circumcised reported an improvement in their sex life. Researchers studied 455 male partners of men who were recently, 40% said sex was more satisfying, 57% reported no change, and 3% said sex was less satisfying. Our partner had no difficulty maintaining or getting an erection. Top reasons cited by these women for their better sex life was improved hygiene, longer time for their partner to achieve orgasm, and their male partner wanting more frequent sex. With these arguments, I feel I have explained why circumcision should remain a permissible medical practice. And with that, I yield the mic.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks for breaking all that down, Ronan. I think that the medical benefits are quite trivial if they exist at all, and they're very hotly contested. For example, I think you brought up an HIV study or the risk reduction in HIV, and on the surface, that sounds quite significant, a 60% reduction in HIV, but that's the relative risk reduction, and the absolute risk reduction is around 1.3%. And so this is what you have to decide. Is having highly specialized structures from your penis, like your prepuce, your frenulum, your ridged bands, right? Highly specialized erogenous components of your genitals, is that worth it for a 1.3% reduction in acquiring this sexually transmitted disease? I think that really is left up to the person, the individual person. For me, having components ablated off my penis as like a fragile infant, right? I was strapped down as a 0-day-old infant to a circumstraint, a device that restrains my hands and my legs. And a man was standing over me and put a clamp around my penis. And personally, for me, Ronan, I had 50% of the erogenous tissue on my penis ablated, right? So the penis that can produce erotic sensations, my frenulum is gouged out of my penis. And I look down on it, right? And I've literally cried. Like, I've sat down and I looked at my penis and I'm like, oh my God, I'm mutilated. I feel raped and violated. Like, I was sexually mutilated as a child, and these just profound sensory components that it's such an important facet of life. Sexual stimulation, like, we're taught to look at it maybe as so icky growing up, but it's really quite significant. And it's like the closest way you can connect with another person. And I seriously, I just look at my penis and I see this keratinized, organ that's really just been violated. And so I'm just so curious, like, how do you ignore that? How do you look past that, the anatomy that's gone? Like, it's so obvious to me. It's so obvious how that impacts me sexually. It's like, it would be comical if it wasn't so morbid. This is your mobile skin system on your penis, highly innervated mucosal membrane tissue, right? Like your glands is mucosal membrane tissue. You wouldn't really know it because it's so keratinized, but it's supposed to be like the inside of a vagina. And then you have this entire mobile skin system that's comprised of multiple specialized structures, like I mentioned earlier, the frenulum and the ridge band, and that like moves up and down, stimulating your glands and your whole penis. And I just have like this taut, immobile penis that doesn't function in any way. It's so obvious, right? I went out and I sought pornographic material, and that's the first thing I did is I compared it. And you know, my penis looks like a burn victim's. I mean, it's just, it's sick. It's sick. And what was done to me as a child is fucking sick. It's a crime of the highest possible caliber, genital mutilation. And I've seen videos of this happening to children, and it will disturb me for the rest of my life. The rest of my life. It's a child screaming out in pain as his penis is being mutilated. Like, how can you guys not fight for this? You call yourself Knights of the Round Table?
1 minute.
Really? And you won't fight for the right of a child, an infant, completely innocent, being violated like that, being strapped down and violated in that way. I don't know what even to say to that. That is a sickness that is satanic to the highest degree. So I'm going to end my time early, and I'll just listen to Ronan's response.
Okay.
So I understand. So,
Your time begins when you do, Ronan, for round 2.
okay, so I deeply apologize that you were mutilated and you feel so strongly about it. I do have some issues though. So my experience with circumcision was I wasn't circumcised at birth, right? I was circumcised at 3-4 years old. My dad was completely against circumcision. My mom lied to him and said I wanted to be circumcised. So I got circumcised, right? And yes, you're right. You're completely right. It's body mutilation. It's genital mutilation. You're completely right about that. But your argument is that it's wrong, right? You're saying that you were in pain, or you see these babies in pain, but at 3-4 years old, I got circumcised. I don't remember pain. I don't remember being pain an issue at all. And you brought up the fact that, you know, you lost 50% of your stimuli when it comes to your penis, but it shows that there is no difference between the circumcised and uncircumcised men in their ability to sense extrospective and tactile stimuli on the ventral and dorsal surfaces of the glands. This definitely counters the idea of loss of penile sensation. So, but when you're sitting here saying it's satanic and evil, you're kind of calling, you know, the Bible satanic and evil. And is it satanic and evil to take in the well-being of a child in regards to possible medical issues regarding not being circumcised? And it's actually been shown that from ages 1 to 9, the complications due to procedures increase by 20 times. And that number. So my question to you is it considered evil to have a child circumcised at birth to prevent future medical conditions? Or is it they become at an age for them to choose for themselves and deal with the increased risk of medical complications regarding such procedure? I feel like it's not an evil practice, and it shouldn't be up to society whether or not parents choose what they do with their child, because the parents are.
Ronan, are you there? You seem to have cut off. I've paused your time.
When did I cut off?
Probably about 10 seconds ago. 15.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you heard this, but my question is it wrong to assume that a child doesn't want to be circumcised at birth, and then they eventually grow up, make the decision themselves they want to be circumcised, and now they're dealing with that increased rate of complications due to the procedure. And it shouldn't be morally wrong or evil for parents to take into consideration the well-being of their child. I don't think that's evil at all. And you watch videos of children getting circumcised, I understand, yeah, it's very extreme to watch. You know, I have feelings when I watch that too. I have issues with circumcision too. I don't like the fact that these doctors are taking scalpels to the penis of a child. There are other ways we can handle circumcision, like I believe it's called the Morgan clamp. It really doesn't require a knife to the genitalia of the infant child. It just requires a thread and a clamp, pretty much no different from what they put on the end of an umbilical cord for it to fall off. Within a week, the foreskin will fall off. So it's great. I have issues with people taking knives to genitalia of infant male children because we don't need to do that anymore. But I can't sit here and say it's evil for something like this to happen, because I just don't see the evil in it, considering that it's all about the well-being of the child. And with that, I yield my time.
All right, thank you very much. That ends round 2 for Ronan. Round 2 for Carter begins whenever you're ready.
All right, so whether circumcision impacts the sensory experience, I mean, in academia, that is something that's hotly contested. And I just posted a study that concludes that circumcision ablates the most sensitive parts of the penis, right? So we can find studies that validate what we're saying all over the place. And you specifically said you were talking about the glands. Like your study referred to the glands, the innervation of the glands, I guess, remained the same, or the sensory experience of it. But what about all the other specialized tissues? So I don't necessarily even agree with that. And maybe immediately following a circumcision, like what was tested there before the glands have keratinized, right? Before the keratin proteins have adhered to that very delicate mucosal membrane tissue and formed this thick keratin layer, causing a diminishment in sensation. Before that's taken place, I'm sure that's when the testing was done. Potentially not, who knows? But that, I guess, also didn't compare the components that were ablated as well, right? Like the frenulum, if that was ablated, or the ridged band, or the foreskin, right? The prepuce. So I guess it omitted those highly erogenous structures in their own right. And other studies have found that those areas are actually, they have a higher degree of sensitivity than the glands itself. And so potentially those are of even more importance than the mucosal membrane tissue that lines the glands. So I just wanted to contest that point that you brought up. And then you ask, you say, I guess you pose the question, like, is that acceptable for a parent to do to a child if they think it's for the greater good? So really what you're saying is it acceptable for a child, for a parent to hand their child over to someone and have that person excise their genital structures? And from my position, I have to say absolutely not. In no way is it morally permissible for a parent to do that, and in no way is it permissible for a medical professional or anyone to remove those structures from a child. And to the religious point that you brought up from a biblical stance, I myself am an atheist, so that is of absolutely no importance to me. But I can see why that would be so conflicting for someone who has that religious background, whether you're Jewish, Muslim, really any of the Abrahamic religions, right? Judaism, Islam, Christianity, they all have that component to them. Where Abraham, a 99-year-old man, right? God asked a 99-year-old man to circumcise himself and all of his descendants. So that is definitely a part of that book. I can't really speak to that because not only do I not believe in any of it in any shape or form, I wouldn't agree regardless. Even if God said to do that, I wouldn't think it was morally permissible. Whether I did it or not doesn't really matter. I would not think that that was morally permissible to violate an infant in that way. And I really think you have to let the individual decide, right? You're saying it didn't really matter to you. I don't even know why you got circumcised, right? It was potentially for no reason, or a reason that was made to seem very important at the time. Oh, my foreskin couldn't be pulled down, right? Oh, well, actually, the foreskin is adhered to a neonate
1 minute.
and a young child up until, early childhood or potentially even later on. Balanitis, right? Why wouldn't you just treat that? Why would you go to such an extreme as excising tissue? The only time that tissue should be excised is when there's no other alternative, like gangrene, right? If you have gangrene on your penis, then maybe you turn to excising the tissue. But every other last resort should be tried. And our European counterparts, that's what they do, right? They try everything they can to preserve that tissue because they know the value of it. They know how important it is. They know that specialized sensory tissue is so valuable to the individual that they'll do everything to make sure that it does not get removed. But in America, we're so willy-nilly, we'll just cut it off for nothing. So I'm honestly sorry that happened to you as a child. I genuinely am. I bet you're not. And I think
that's time.
All right.
All right, Ronan, round 3 for you begins whenever you do.
Well, I'm just got to start by saying I understand where you're coming from, man. And when it comes to looking up articles about this and that, we can easily fall to confirmation bias, right? You can provide a number of articles that present your case well, and I have a number of articles that presents my case well, but you keep on arguing the fact that whether or not this is morally right or wrong, and I keep on coming back to the fact that it would be morally wrong for a child at the age to where he can make the decision himself at 15 years old, according to the AAP, that child would make the decision that you chose for him 15 years prior and have to deal with the pain and remember the problems and all involved. Because I don't think it's morally wrong, because I don't remember getting circumcised. Even at 3-4 years old, I don't remember it. And I can ask any male out there in the world that's been circumcised, do you remember getting circumcised? And do you remember the pain involved? And I guarantee you 99% of them are going to say, no, I don't remember. There was no pain. And to be honest with you, man, I grew up my whole life thinking I was uncircumcised because I was always told I was uncircumcised. I had a weird family, right? So basically, it really doesn't come down to what you think is morally right or wrong. It's not your choice. It's not society's choice what other parents do with their children, regardless of your opinion. And you're saying, like, how can a parent send their children over to this man and have their genitalia mutilated? Well, I mean, if you're worried about genitalia mutilation, then pregnancy should be outlawed too, because that's essentially genital mutilation. Some people don't recover from giving birth, and it's an issue, right? So would it be morally wrong to give birth? And I mean, that's where I'm at right now. And so I really don't have much more to say on this other than I'm kind of like Switzerland on it, man. Like, so there's a lot of things I agree with when it comes to circumcision, but there's a lot of things I don't agree with. Like I already brought up the point that I don't agree that a scalpel should be taken to the penis of infant child. Dude, this has been around for 3,000 years. Can we not come up with better fucking ways to, for this procedure to make it less risky? And I know that there are botched procedures. They happen all the time. But there's more procedures done that were successful, and the outcomes of those procedures were very beneficial to the child, especially grown up at a later age. So I don't exactly know where I'm going with that point. I apologize. But anyways, yeah, I agree with you, man. It's wrong to, like, take a knife to genitally mutilate a child, but you can't deny that this is a permissible medical practice, because there are medical conditions that require the circumcision of said foreskin. And if you take away that medical practice based off of what you feel is morally right or wrong, you're forcing your opinions and beliefs on other people that may need these surgeries in the future, which wouldn't be available to them because a group of people decided it was morally wrong and should be abolished. I think that would be evil, forcing your opinions and beliefs on other people, telling parents they're evil and wrong for doing what they're doing. That's evil. That's wrong, because parents aren't evil. They're not wrong for taking the well-being of their child into consideration. And with that, I have to yield the mic because I really don't have more to present.
Okay. Well, that's the end of round 3 for you. Carter, round 3 for you begins when you do.
Okay, so I just want to clarify my position is that infant circumcision is not permissible. Taking away the practice in totality is not what I am. That's not the position that I take at all. I think it should remain an option for individuals who can fully consent to it at an appropriate age, and especially if they have this condition, this unique condition that requires some degree of removal of tissue. Certainly, not their entire foreskin and other structures is always going to be necessary. That's really extreme. And so a last case scenario for an adult, I think that makes a lot of sense to allow that to continue. I would never fight against that in any way, shape, or form. What I am saying, though, is me and other men and other people as zero. I was an infant. I was an infant when this happened. There was no condition that was being treated. There was no pathology that needed to be treated here. I had a completely normal functioning body, and instead of allowing me, that freedom for myself, a penile modification surgery was imposed on me. I'm not a man that wants a penile modification surgery. I'm not sure how that's not explicitly clear to the entire world. It is for a large majority of it. We're this really unique part of the world here in America, and certainly other countries and other parts of the world this is the case. But for such a modern country, for this to be taking place, it really raises a lot of questions. And so you bring up the AAP here, and I really think a more reasonable position from the AAP would be that leave it up to the child itself. Don't impose a genital modification surgery on a child. That can wait. That can wait until they want to make the decision for themselves. It's really a more invasive operation as an infant. They have to first de-adhere the foreskin from the glands. They take a probe in there, and it causes this very serious damage to the glands itself, because they have to rip it off. It's adhered to your glands like a nail is to a nail bed, and they have to jam a probe in there and de-adhere it from the glands. And so the glands come out raw and bloodied, and they really, who knows if the glands tissue fully recovers. It's just been like completely abrasively ripped along the whole area. I mean, it looks like it went through a meat grinder. It's like bloody, and pus is going everywhere. I mean, it's a horrific sight. The parents go, right? They're rubbing Vaseline up and down their infant child's penis. And then you talk about the pain. Like, are you saying that early infancy penile trauma has no impact on the neurological trajectory of a child? I mean, that just does not make any sense. And that the evidence does not back that up. And after this debate, I'll show the studies that highlight the impact of neonatal pain, right? Why do we need studies to even show this? This is the most critical formulative time of development. Yeah, you don't remember it. You don't actually have a conscious memory, but the impact at the time, it impacts the trajectory of the development of the child neurologically. right? All these
1 minute.
It's traumatizing experience happening to the child, and they might not remember that specific episode in time, but the impact of the trauma influences the way that the mind develops, right? They're having this penile modification surgery as an infant, and that is impacting the way that their mind is developing. I don't even know, it's so obvious. Why do you need a study to even see that, to even understand that? If you had a penile modification surgery at any age, it would certainly be an event for you. I know you're saying, you don't remember it. You don't remember it. I'm, 3 or 4, I think you would remember such a significant event. But my closing argument is that I don't find it permissible at all. I don't, even if there was 100% chance of all reduction of every STD, I personally wouldn't have wanted it for myself. And I don't think many other men would either. At the very least, they should have the choice. They should have the choice themselves to decide if they want a modification.
That's
or not.
time.
Right.
Very well put. Ronan, 2 minutes for your closing thoughts. And before you begin, I would like to implore our audience to check out the recorded event channel. And there are 2 straw polls, one for is circumcision wrong, and who you thought won the debate. But please save your votes for the end of the closing arguments. Ronan, go ahead and begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for your time, Carter. This has been awesome, and I feel like I've learned a lot and may have changed some positions regarding the issue at hand. So I agree with you, man. I agree that maybe it should be left to the decision of the child when the child reaches a specific age, because I was trying to argue the fact that it'd be morally wrong for somebody like you to impose your choices and beliefs onto the parents. Then it should be wrong for the parents to impose their choices and beliefs onto the child. With that being said, man, I'm not denying that there's pain involved. I'm not denying that there may be some neurological changes involved, but what I'm saying is I don't remember the pain. I just don't remember it. It wasn't an issue to me. I remember having my parents apply a topical to my genitals twice a day, once in the morning, once at night, for about a week, but there was no discomfort. There was it didn't affect me at all. I didn't have any neurological changes at all. My brain functions didn't change. I was still the same happy-go-lucky child. The only thing missing is that my foreskin was taken away. So with that being said, I agree with you. The choice should be made to the child, but at the same time, the practice should remain permissible due to certain medical conditions. I yield the mic.
Very nice. Carter, go ahead and begin whenever you're ready. 2 minutes.
All right. This is just more of an informative comment for Ronan. So there's not a single procedure with circumcision, right, with a single outcome. And so there's actually quite a spectrum to the degree of tissue loss and the amount of structures removed. So who knows, right? I'm not going to be imposing and ask, how much tissue was removed from your penis, but that's the question that actually a lot of guys ask, when they actually start thinking about this topic more, and they want to know the damage, if that's what you consider it, that was done to you. And so that actually plays a huge role in the amount of trauma that happens. I don't think it's permissible at all for anyone for an infant, or a young child or anything like that to any degree, even if they took a millimeter of tissue away. But we might have totally different ideas on even what the foreskin is, right? So I would really encourage you, Ronan, and everyone else here to, look
1
into
minute.
the anatomy of an intact penis to really understand what is being removed from a child. That's where the crux of this issue is. The consent, none of these things matter once you understand that it's mutilation. The medical benefits, they don't matter anymore. They're so trivial in comparison to the sexual loss that oftentimes that always happens with infant circumcision. But even more interestingly, the amount of tissue that's removed in infant circumcision is oftentimes profoundly invasive compared when the adult maybe gets to choose for themselves or down the line, it is not just this trivial little slit of skin. It is a massive amputation of multiple specialized erogenous structures from a male. It's a profound loss. It is. And that's my closing statement.
And those are profound remarks. Thank you, gentlemen. Again, I implore our audience to go ahead and check out those straw polls. At this moment, I would like to open it up to the floor for anybody who has any comments or questions on this topic.
Thank you, if I can, and hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much, Merlin, for running the event when I was not able to today. Great job. Secondarily, thank you so much to Ronan for stepping in when Celtic stepped out of this debate. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Carter, for doing an excellent job arguing a point that I am in 100% agreement with. And so all around, big success. Also, thank you, everybody, for attending. I have very strong feelings about this. I won't have time to go over them all, but just let me know if I robot. But I would like to say a fefew things. First of all, I'm so sorry for your loss, Carter. You and I
Thank
share
you.
exactly the same passion about this, but unfortunately unfortunately, you know, I'm on the other side of it where I'm uncut, thank God, but my heart breaks for you dudes. So the point is, I know how big of a loss it is, just like you know from what you've lost. I know from what I have how much I would lose if I didn't have it, if you see what I'm
Right.
saying. Because I can actually easily tell what it does and how important it is and how horrible it would be if I didn't have it, right? Now, if you've never had it and you lost it at birth, you wouldn't understand what you're missing, right? But I know what I have and I know exactly what I'd be missing, and it's a fuck of a lot. So that I agree with. Now, I'm just going to make this really quick if I can, sorry. So the reasons why circumcision is just absolutely and completely unethical is because of what makes ethics ethics, right? And I have a very clear understanding of this. So you are not allowed to hurt another being unnecessarily. That is unethical. You are not allowed to hurt another being unethically or unnecessarily without their consent. That is even more unethical. You are not allowed to perform unnecessary surgeries under any circumstances without consent. The only time that would be appropriate would be in the form of cosmetic surgery with consent. You never amputate healthy tissue. There is no such thing as a safe surgery. Every surgery has an inescapable risk of infection and death. Because of that, every year, babies die who are perfectly healthy. Now, if you take a perfectly healthy baby, you take a knife to it and that baby dies, that's not a medical accident. That's murder, okay? So every year, children are murdered on a hospital table by a doctor in cooperation with their parents. So the doctor is a murderer and the parents are accomplices to murder. And this is not an insignificant number of people. If you were to take all of the children, the infants who have died throughout history, through the history of this abomination of a practice, that pile of babies dead would be so high you could not see above it and you could not see around it. And to walk around that pile of bodies or climb over it, I mean, you can't even imagine, right? This is not a small thing. These are innocent babies being murdered because unnecessary surgeries are being enacted on them to amputate healthy tissues that are functional and important from perfectly healthy bodies. Now, if you want to show your dedication to Muhammad or to Yahweh, you do that as an adult, because it is meaningless to say, this is how we set ourselves apart. Yeah, that's all very noble and good if you do that of your own free will. But if I hold you down, strap you to a circumstance and take something away from you, I have sacrificed nothing, right? I have inflicted harm on you. So you believe in circumcision? You better be old enough to tell me you want it. And we know how old you have to be. How old do you have to be to get a tattoo? 18. How old do you have to be to drink alcohol? In Canada, at least 18. How old do you have to be to smoke a cigarette? 18. Get a piercing? 18. Have sex with an adult? 18. Et cetera, right? So why are we then doing involuntary forced amputations on infants? We already have a moral standard here. It's called adult consent. Don't inflict unnecessary harm. And in doing an unnecessary surgery is a medical malpractice because babies die. That's what I have to say about that.
I'd like to say something. Coming from the point of view of someone that can see what a covenant is with the Abrahamic stories, like the covenant is the point of like sacrifice and the complete relationship with a God. I fully understand that. But the point of a sacrifice is having the ability and then making the choice in order to align yourself with a goal that you make so that you're not sinning. And there's no way that a baby has the ability and can make the sacrifice in order to align itself with the goal to get closer to a God. So just like the Christian, like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Man, I can personally say, like I'm sure Gallahan can, or like, for example, like how you have. I have been, I'm cut, and there's a problem with that. So, like, personally, it might be a TMI, but I last, like, sorry.
Doing work.
I last.
Sorry, there's no interruptions, right? So never speak until someone's completed their full point, please.
Yeah, so I last like 4 to 6 hours, and there's no way for me to recapture sensation without, being cut, like he said. And I don't know, I just see like a serious problem with that. That's all I have to say.
That this doesn't have to come down to you being cut, because I know plenty of cut people who have premature ejaculation. So you can't really say, well, that's because you've been cut. Doesn't have to be a relations there. Logan, I'm sorry, also for you, counselor, because of the modern Western outlook on life, you think that, well, a person is a free agent, he's independent, therefore it should be placed on his decision. That's his decision to make, no one else. But you don't understand that the way ancient people, at least Semitic people, have viewed the world is that no, a person is not a free agent. A person is part of his community, and he cannot be separated from his community whether he likes it or not. And the parents will always be the parents of the child, and on some level, they are the owners of that child in some form, yeah, as their property. And I actually believe that it is a healthy outlook to understand this relationship, this dynamics between a parent and a child, and to say, well, some stuff should be left for the child to decide when he grows older. That could lead to a lot of bad decisions later on in life. And I think that has society become more quote unquote liberated, where people are free as individuals.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that
Over talk.
some people should
Why
be.
am I being over?
Sorry, Dreamly. I thought you were done. Maybe you dropped out, but apparently Dreamly was not done. So let's let him
Oh, I
continue.
thought, yeah, he completely stopped.
Okay, okay. So I think it is quite visible how the modern society has degenerated in so many ways. Now, as for you, Shogun, you said that you have a good comprehension on ethics, and I don't think you do, because there is no ethics possible without appealing to a higher power, to a higher source that is distinct from humanity, to draw your ethics from. Now, people of the Bible and people of Quran draw it from a God that ordains circumcision. So they have just as good as an ethical case as you do.
If I can quickly respond to that, I know someone else wanted to speak as well. I just want to say, first of all, it's good to see you, Dreamly. It's been a while. Hope you've been more. Two, I'd love to do a debate with you in the future about what you're talking about now, ethics, whether they can be an ethics with the Torah or the Quran or the Bible, because I believe that my ethics, etc., does not depend on the Bible, despite the fact that I am, in fact, a born-again Christian, right? And I believe in God, I believe in the Holy Spirit, I believe in Jesus Christ, so I absolutely have a higher power like you. The difference is my higher power tells me not to mutilate babies, because that would be evil. Apparently, your higher power tells you to mutilate babies, which raises all kinds of questions. But the point is, ethics doesn't depend on a book, and if you think it does, you might end up doing really unethical things. But the problem is that's a totally different discussion, and it's I want to stay on circumcision, whereas ethics in general is broader. Also, quick note, always keep your mic closed when not speaking. Just open it when speaking, because there will inevitably be some kind of background noise. Thank you. So all I wanted to say is one more point I forgot. Here's the big problem with circumcision. If a child decides that they want circumcision when they're old enough to understand what that means and what they're sacrificing, this will be more pleasing to God because the child will have entered into that covenant of their own free will, right? Just in Christianity, we don't force our babies to be Christians, right? Because God wants us to make that free will choice to accept Him and the salvation of Jesus Christ. You cannot force this on anybody. That's one of these fundamental differences. So I have a higher power, but my higher power respects consent, right? But again, I'm not playing a pissing game between Christians and Jews. What I was trying to say is, you can, as an older person, decide to enter into circumcision, and that's totally noble. I have no problem with that, right? That's a genuine sign of devotion to God, and I can tell, right? If you as an adult decide to chop the tip of your penis off, you obviously really believe in God. So I respect that. You're making putting your money where your mouth is, right? You actually are robbing a Jewish child of that opportunity, right? You're taking away his chance to show God that he's really buying in. It's the difference between sex and rape, right? If a woman chooses to have sex with you, you know she actually likes you or loves you. If you rape her, not so much. That's essentially what I see this being equivalent to. Infant circumcision is rape. Adult circumcision is potentially a holy covenant. Now, the thing I would say finally is, when you amputate a child's penis, not only are you taking away a functional thing that God actually made, right? And as Carter pointed out, the foreskin, like everything else in the human body, is wonderfully and exquisitely made by the hands of the Creator Himself. So when you cut that off with a knife, you are despoiling His creation. You are taking what He made, how He made it, and mutilating that. So that's actually blasphemy, in my opinion. Blasphemy against God's creation, blasphemy against your parental role, your highest moral duty, in my opinion, which is to defend your own children. I mean, I have so many opinions on this. I got to keep myself in check. The point I'm trying to make here is, a child can opt into circumcision later, but a child can never opt out of the circumcision later. So you are essentially taking away something you cannot give back, and that is very wrong.
How do you know what God wants?
I'm not going to take the mic again. I'm going to let it circulate. But like I said, I hope you will debate me either on circumcision, God, ethics, Torah, anything you want. Go ahead, Adult.
I'm going to head out, so I'm sorry. I just want to let you guys know that I'm heading out. Thanks a lot for the discussion. I'm heading to the Grand Canyon right now, so I'm leaving.
Okay, well done, Carter. Have fun. Thanks so much. And let me know if you ever want to debate again or join us anytime, bro. Sorry.
Sounds good. Later, guys. Peace out.
And yeah, Dreamly, I want to challenge you to, a debate invite you to a debate in a friendly, respectful way, right? And it could be on Judaism, Christianity, it could be on Jesus, it could be on Torah, it could be on circumcision, it could be on ethics, but just let me know.
On that point, apparently Aziz has the time to appear to listen to someone else debate circumcision, but apparently doesn't in 3 or 4 months have the time to himself debate it like he said he would.
Well, fair point, but again, Aziz knows, I've asked Aziz repeatedly to be a guest on the podcast. As far as I recall, that hasn't happened yet, but I would like to re-extend that invitation to Aziz. It's good to see you as well, Aziz. I'm glad you made it to the event. And I would appreciate it if you would accept a friendly debate on Islam, on Muhammad, on Jesus, on circumcision, or any topic you wish. But obviously that's entirely consensual and in no way is there any pressure, but it would be a good episode.
I do want to say about your statement about the circumcision essentially being against the will of the child or whatever, and how it'd be better if the child would decide that he'd be circumcised as an adult to God. Now, the thing is, we are commanded, it's commanded in the Old Testament, it's commanded in the Torah that Jews from the time of Abraham, from the time of Avraham, Ibrahim, etc., Avraham Avinu, Avla Shalom, it is commanded that Avraham Avinu circumcised himself and he circumcised the generations after him when they were a child, 8 days, 8 days into their birth. And the thing is that I have never heard a single case. There probably has been one. I've never heard of a singular case of a baby dying when being circumcised by a mole. Never. And
I would I'm sorry to interrupt, but please be advised there is a text channel called Recorded Event that goes along with this channel. I've already posted numerous articles. I have literally dozens more. The practice of circumcision by a mohel is extremely much more dangerous than normal circumcision. Many babies get sexually transmitted diseases because, of course, you can transmit these diseases. So go to Recorded Event. You will literally see, and I'll post dozens more. Every year, hundreds of children die with traditional or non-traditional circumcisions. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I wasn't finished, but the thing is, I understand now. I apologize. It's okay. It's okay. The thing is, the sexually transmitted disease part comes from small sects. It comes from small, like only like 5 synagogues practice Metzita Bepe. You're thinking of Metzita Bepe. That's where they get the herpes. Metzita Bepe is like practiced by like 5 synagogues in the Satmar community, and that's it. It's where
They're
they
the only ones that
only
are following God's law.
well, Metzita Bepe isn't commanded, but anyways, the thing is that the baby in of itself is not conscious enough to make its own decisions like that. And you'll say, "Oh yes, it gives the baby physical trauma." That's for me. That's a different debate. However, the baby is not conscious enough to make its own decisions. Circumcision in of itself, when it comes to people, when it comes to, let's say, just Jewish circumcision, I've never heard of a case of a baby. There probably has been one. Never heard of a case of a baby getting an infection or dying as a result of being circumcised by a mole. The thing is, and I'll look at the articles. Hold on, I'll look at the articles that you said. But the thing is, you're thinking when it comes to STDs, you're thinking of Metzita Bepe. That's where it comes from, not from the act of cutting off the foreskin itself.
Okay, let me know when you're done, because I keep thinking you are. I don't mean to interrupt you.
It's okay, I'm done now.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to explain something, right? So yes, obviously, putting your mouth on an open surgical wound is the worst possible hygienic practice because the human mouth is infested with bacteria and STDs, etc. And we call them STDs, right? But herpes and so forth are not only spread by sex, right? So it doesn't mean these, mohels are sleeping around. You can get herpes from sharing a drink or anything, right? But the point is herpes can be spread by the mouth. And so if you put your mouth on an open surgical wound, this is basically science and epidemiology 101, right? That's not how you handle surgery. Surgery is supposed to be sterile. Your mouth ain't sterile. And no, obviously we don't allow people to put their mouths on genitals, of infants' genitals, but that's a different question entirely. The point is, whether it's traditional, right, in the context of a mohel, or whether it's modern in the context of a surgery, is irrelevant in a way. I mean, yes, the traditional way is much more unhygienic, much more ethically problematic, but circumcision is evil regardless. And the reason why is not because the traditional thing, it's because every surgery, it's literally like a 1 + 1 = 2, A, B, C logic. When you cut the body, you open a wound and you open the skin, you create an entry point for bacteria infection like staph or medication-resistant staph infection, MRSA, right? Hospitals are riddled with these diseases. And so every single surgery, however minor, and circumcision is far from minor, it's an extremely traumatic process, but it has an inherent, inevitable, logical, common sense, and unavoidable risk of death through complication, through accident, through infection. Every year, children are not only killed or die from circumcision, they also suffer accidental castrations of the penis, partial castration of the penis, complete loss of sexual function for life, castration of the testicles. People have been forced into unwanted and unconsensual transgender processes because the doctor accidentally cut the penis and balls off doing a circumcision and then advised the parents to just raise them as a girl. Then that person eventually found out they were a boy and committed suicide. I mean, I'll post my whole reservoir of these stories. This is a litany of tragedies and atrocities, and I'll get off the mic quickly. But please keep your mics closed at all times when not speaking. So all I wanted to say is there's no such thing as a risk-free surgery, right? And that's why we never perform surgeries unnecessarily, because when we do, babies die unnecessarily. And no, God does not magically prevent this from happening, unfortunately. And the fact that you have, quote unquote, never heard of it is totally irrelevant. That simply means you've never attempted to research it. All you'd have to do is Google deaths from circumcision, and you would find hundreds of thousands of stories, as I have done.
By a mole, not by a doctor, but by a mole.
So what is your theory about why a surgeon, right, in a doctor's office with a sterile scalpel and the best possible medical practice, what is your theory about how a traditional mohel using his mouth would somehow magically remove the issues I just mentioned?
I didn't say that a baby hasn't died from bris milah. I have never said that. What I said,
So you never heard of it.
No, I said no. I said, like, for example, you're mentioning piles of dead babies. The thing is that when it comes to people who are moles, for example, I haven't heard of a case of that. Now the thing is, I'm not saying that it hasn't happened. It probably has happened at one point when there probably has been infections, etc. But the thing is like, it's very unlikely for I'm just saying it's very unlikely for a baby to die as a result of bris milah. Like, once again, I mean, I'll research more into that. I'll look at the articles that you sent. But once again, it just seems rather unlikely.
So I'd like to, I'm not going to keep. Go ahead. Sorry, Jeremy. Go ahead.
Why do we have to cater to the philosophy and worldview of other people? I mean, okay, you have your belief, we have ours. stay out of our business.
Well, 100% Dreamly,
Because you're
until
mutilating a child and you're
yeah,
harming a child.
hold on. This is a totally valid question, but the answer should be obvious, right? Yeah, of course. Do your thing, as long as thou are not hurting other people without their consent. So if your religion did not involve, please don't interrupt. I'm clearly speaking. I'm sorry, Dreamly. I don't know why you would be trying to overtalk me when it's my turn and I'm responding to your points. I had to mute you. Unfortunately, that shouldn't have been necessary. Just follow the rules. So I'll unmute you when I'm done. But all I'm saying is, right, you asked a question. I'm now giving you the answer. You said, it's our way. Why do you interfere? I'll tell you why. We are not only justified in stopping this, we are morally obligated to stop it. It's because you are not practicing your religion freely. You are inflicting abuse on an infant. So if I say, well, if I want to, I'm not going to be explicit because it's disturbing. But I could think of any other number of ways you could hurt a child and then use the exact same logic. Hey, it's my child, it's my life, it's my lifestyle. Who are you to say? That's the point, right? Consenting adults can do whatever we want. Children are entitled to the protection of states, and every good person has a protection. You see, the children will get a choice, right? Nobody wants to prevent you from freely practicing your religion, but those babies have no freedom whatsoever. They don't even know what religion they're in, and the pain that's being inflicted on them, they didn't consent to it. So we have to speak for them because they have no voice, and sadly their own parents have been convinced that they should be hurting their own children, which is extremely tragic. And I'll unmute you now, but please remember, right? No one will interrupt you, so don't interrupt anyone else either. You're now unmuted.
Yeah, I would like to know how the religious defenders of circumcision, how would you and under what theory do you prevent someone from doing any of those other things that Shogun mentioned or hesitated to mention that you could do to sexually harm a child? Under what standard can you say that raping a child sexually for sexual gratification or for religious purposes is wrong?
So, Shogun, with all due respect, I wasn't actually finished. You took it as a sign to start answering my question, even though I haven't yet finished. And, you being the mod, I just had to shut up because you were the mod.
But I want to point out you didn't shut up. That was the problem. You tried to fight for the mic. So I'm now clarifying this, right? So the reason that understands when you ask a question.
Clarify stuff. You're right. You're the mod.
Yes, for moderation. Yes, because in order to eliminate any confusion, right? You haven't been here in a while. This is probably why you're rusty. If someone's interrupting you, it's only permissible for moderation, right? And in this case, the confusion, as you pointed out, is you asked a question and it wasn't clear to me that was rhetorical. I thought it was a sincere question, so I apologize. But you're right. Once I start speaking, then you should actually just be quiet. Not because I'm a mod, but because we don't allow fighting for the mic, right? Because that creates distortion, two people at once. So it's not that I'm trying to power trip here. This is a recorded event. If you speak when I'm speaking, it creates echo. That echoes on the recording. Nobody can hear you. Nobody can hear me. So yes, I can mute you, not because I'm trying to power trip, but because I'm trying to keep this recording as clean as possible. So I will now unmute you. I apologize for misunderstanding. You will have your full turn, but please don't waste it on anything other than your actual point.
Yeah, so you can basically come up with any excuse you want to.
Okay, I see. You didn't understand. I'm sorry you now yielded your turn. You had a chance to make your point, but you chose to argue moderation. That's against the rules. Please read the rules again before you're unmuted. You'll have to confirm you've understood them and you promise to follow them.
Hello? Oh, can I have the mic?
You guys hear that?
Yes. I would like to talk if I can.
You don't need to ask for the mic.
Okay, well, this is actually my first debate going to, and I'm actually Jewish, and I actually am appalled by the practice of circumcision. And what I find appalling is that whether Jews or seculars or non-religious people defend the practice, they always shroud themselves in cultural relativism. It's like, oh, it's part of our culture. Oh, it's my choice. It's my choice. With genital cutting of females, for instance, now all of a sudden they're like, no, that's objectively wrong. I can't help but notice that double standard in that debate.
That's a good point. I would like to talk about the Bible talks about circumcision as well as the Torah, but these texts were written like thousands of years ago when people's knowledge of A, personal hygiene, and B, general medicine were not as good as we have today. So at that time, the act of circumcision could be understandable, but I believe it has no reasonable part in our modern world today.
I mean, I'm actually what we consider secular, like it's an outdated principle, but I mean, it's just a very it's outdated, and it's extremely hypocritical. I mean, I would like to hear what what's his name, Vincent Punchall, there.
Yeah.
Are you
Listen,
from-
am I
Before Vincent goes, I'd like to say something. May I say?
Sure. I just want to ask where Vincent Punchall is from.
me? I'm Kharedi.
Sorry, guys. Sorry to interrupt. Aziz, first of all, never ask for the mic. Just never interrupt. So we don't like to hear "May I speak?" if we just don't want interruptions. You're automatically entitled to the mic as long as no one else is speaking. That being said, let's give that mic to Aziz, please, and let him have his point.
Just trying to.
Thank you. Sorry about the breach of protocol. So I just want to make 2 points here. I'm not going to go on an extensive, debate or anything. Maybe that's for another time. I will say that there are, for the anti-circumcision activists here, or the intactivists, their arguments rest on. There are two fundamental assumptions that their arguments rest on, and there are probably more, but there are two assumptions that I wanted to identify. One of the assumptions is that the infant has the exact same rights as a full-grown adult, so you are basically making an equivalent to an adult in terms of the rights and. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can actually. I didn't hear him cut out on my end, but.
Okay. So if I did cut out, I apologize. So one of the underlying assumptions here is that that the infant has the exact same rights as an adult would. So obviously, like if there were another adult, you wouldn't just go ahead and circumcise them, without their permission. So that's one aspect here in terms of like parental rights versus infant rights and things like that. So that there's a legal discussion there. And then the second assumption that the intactivists are making is that that this practice of circumcision is harmful to the infant. In a future, I'm not going to get into those right now, but hopefully in a future podcast or debate, I'm considering, exploring some of those issues. So stay tuned, but it won't be now, and it will not be on, somebody's, demanding a particular timetable. When I'm ready to discuss it, I will do that. But those are two areas that I would like to explore in the future, potentially. Okay, over to you.
Infants have human rights. Period.
I wanted so. Sorry, the Blue Sailor asked me a question, and the thing is, you asked me where I was from, and what do you mean by that?
Just like, I'm not asking for like your address. I'm not asking like
No,
that.
I know.
Like,
So you're asking if I'm like religious or
where you live, like what part of. I mean, you sound like from the what country are you from, if I may ask? Like, for example.
I was originally born in America, but I moved to Hebron in Israel, especially the West Bank, Yehuda Shomron. And the thing is that you are, I assume that you're secular, correct, or like Reform?
Sir.
Okay, so the thing is, I don't understand when you say that it's hypocritical to proclaim, us supporting circumcision as some kind of hypocrisy. I don't understand what you mean by that, because we are literally commanded from Avinu Shevashamayim, God. We are commanded from the literal supreme being, the person who's created everything that you see around you and everything that there ever will be. He's commanded us to do this. He commanded. Sorry, hold on. Can you hear me? Okay. He commanded Avram Avinu, Abraham, to circumcise himself and the generations after him. So I don't know what you mean by hypocrisy. What is the hypocrisy? We don't just do it out of cultural tradition, Achi. We don't do it out of cultural tradition. We do it out of commandment.
I'm literally okay. I mean, it's basically like the moral stance of permissibility of cutting a boy's genitals versus a girl's genitals. And Jewish community, when it comes to cutting a boy's genitals, they're totally okay with it. Cut it off galore. With girls, they're very strongly against that, and that's the hypocrisy.
What is the hypocrisy? You said cutting off the genitals of women, so like cutting off, the clitoris.
Yeah, clitoris, vulva. Yes.
Any part. 1%.
Okay, Blue Sailor, I don't know what you mean by hypocrisy. We don't cut off the genitals of our women. We don't cut off, the clitoris. First of all, the clitoris is different. It's very different from the foreskin. Secondly, we don't cut off the clitoris of the woman because the man has more of the covenant
He
to
didn't
bear.
specify clitoris. Any part.
Like any part, like Yeah, the thing is, yeah, that this is the hypocrisy about is or a double standard. That's what I meant. Double standard. Sorry, double standard. Double standard. It's a sexist one.
How is it sexist?
Because male bodily autonomy is protected, whereas male bodily autonomy is not.
Okay, well, Akhi, I'm going to tell you something. Not everything is going to be equal in the eyes of God. Like, for example, men, like I just said, men have more of the covenant to bear as opposed to women. Women are born of a more spiritually clean klipa, meaning they're born of a more spiritually. What a klipa is it's essentially like your spiritual husk or whatever, like the nature of your soul, which which allows you to behave differently, to have different mannerisms, to have different reactions and instincts, etc. Women are born of a more spiritually clean klipa. That is why they don't need to fulfill as many things, as the man does. They don't need to fulfill, extreme learning in Torah. They don't need to fulfill X, Y, Z. And the thing is that the man does because of the fact. One of the reasons why we do is because of the fact that our klipa is different from that of a woman's. So we bear the covenant on our body as opposed to a woman bearing the covenant because of the fact that it is mainly our job to push forward to push forward the different prophecies that have been given to us. The main prophecy that we are fulfilling right now is the coming of the Mashiach. Who's going to be the Mashiach? A mem, somebody from Bais David, from the house of David. Somebody. So for example, like they're just who can be Kohanim, who can be high priests, men. Like once again, almost everything in Judaism is required to be fulfilled by a man. Otherwise, it can't be fulfilled. So once again, it's not a disadvantage. I don't see the disadvantage at all in how it's quote unquote sexist.
Mind if I add my 2 cents here? Like it's fine and all for religion, but most people, at least in Western cultures like the U.S., Europe, don't do circumcision for religious reasons. So that alone, it doesn't make it an excuse for anyone else to do it. Like if you do your religious practice, I don't care. I think it's deemed wrong. I'm always going to think it's deemed wrong. But in terms of religious reasons, I don't care. It has everything to do with an objective reason. In this case, I believe.
Okay, I'm just saying. Once again, it's not necessarily immoral to do that. Like once again, this is, for those of you who believe in the supreme creator of the universe. Okay, Blue Sailor, do you believe that God exists? Do you believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
Considering that he watched needlessly 6 million of his chosen people die, I don't believe in him.
Okay. And I mean,
you. Vincent.
Yes, I believe raping a child is wrong.
How could you possibly? How could you possibly say that?
What do you mean? How could I possibly say that?
Well, whether you're getting sexual gratification or not doesn't make it moral or not. You're sexually harming a child because you say God said so. That doesn't make it okay.
Raping a child.
Yes.
Yo, by that logic, right? If there was like a child who had something extremely wrong in an area of his body, let's say, the child's anus or the child's genitals, and that had to be
that hypothetical is irrelevant. If a child
to let each other finish their complete points, please.
Let me speak, man. By that same logic, I could literally say that literally any simple surgery could be rape because once again, the child can't consent to it. It's a literal baby. It's a baby.
I didn't say it was lacking consent.
Yes, but you're saying that it's rape. So here's the thing. By the same logic, I could say a surgery that could be done to save a child's life would also be rape. Once again, that's very, very...
No. The difference is because that surgery would be done because
about
to
the
save
rules
their life.
happening. Everyone must be quiet. So you guys are over talking, you're interrupting, you're interjecting. If you disagree, you must wait till the person finishes their point. Then you may respond. You may not ever respond during someone's point.
Okay. I mean, really, once again, like I said, by that same logic, you could say that literally any surgery...
Okay, now you've repeated yourself 3 times. I thought it was my turn
I
to
just warned you,
respond.
who is breaking the rule, please mute them, send them the rules. You're not excluded from the remainder of the chat as you're not listening.
Okay. I'm not trying to repeat myself. I was going to make another point beside that. Anyways, Yes, like I said, by the same logic, that could also be any circumcision. Let me finish. I was going to make another point.
I just specifically asked for the person who keeps interrupting to be muted. None of my mods responded. Immediately mute that person. I don't know who it is, but they are not listening, and they have lost their voice chat privileges until they understand and follow the rules.
Anyways, no, the thing is once again, a child is not going to feel any sort of they're not really going to feel any sort of pain. They actually forget that pain in less than a month. Once again, there's very the argument that it's raping a child, or it's harming a child against its basic human rights is very irrelevant, especially if you're a religious person. If you believe in an Abrahamic religion, and you believe that God is a completely moral, he's completely just. Because if you believe in Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, and you don't believe that God is completely just, then you're a heretic according to those religions. Well, I mean, and otherwise, if you're a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim who believes in God, then it's completely irrelevant for you to argue that circumcision is immoral.
The thing is that we're talking about a surgery that isn't needed in any way, shape, or form. Like, the thing is that it's mainly for the most part, it's a cosmetic surgery. I would put it. I wouldn't put it into an important surgery. Like for me, I had a spinal tap at 10 days old, and it's affected my back a little bit. I have slight back problems in my lower back, but aside from that, like, they thought I had a disease that would kill me within 24 hours, and that's affected me a little bit. But it's for the most part, they just had to make a quick decision at that point. I wouldn't call it rape. For more cosmetic surgeries, like, let's say, just cutting off somebody's foot just for the hell of it, just because it looks better, it doesn't make any logical sense. It's just like, for religious reasons, I couldn't tell you. Like, you're arguing religious reasons when we're trying to talk objectivity. It should be not anything about religion in this discussion. For the most part, it should be about, is it a moral wrong or a moral, because like we go all about, like, oh, these health benefits, or what if the kid has complications. It's the same thing with the abortion topic. Is it morally right to kill an unborn fetus? Because like I'm talking like way later in, let's say, third trimester or some shit like that. Like, is it right to do? It's the same question. It's not right. You should take responsibility for your child and your actions.
Also, let's repeat his point.
Yeah, but
sorry,
Kix,
you go on.
Thank you. So Kix, you see, I've looked at your tags, and it says that you're a conservative Christian. Now, if you're a conservative Christian, you believe that God has conveyed to Abraham that he should circumcise. You don't ever talk to me, Kix.
Mind if I interrupt just really quickly?
There's no interruption. I've made that extremely clear. You guys are not listening, and I'm sick of it. Wait till people are finished, then reply. There is no interruption. Anyone who interrupts is to be muted. The rules are to be sent to them. They're not to be unmuted until they reply to the person who sent. I fully understand the rules and agree to follow them. Anyone who is muted, speaking an interruption at this point, should automatically be muted by the mods. Please do so automatically.
Yeah, so you don't get to quickly interrupt me. It doesn't work like that. So, as I was trying to say, well, then you sincerely believe as a Christian that God did convey to Abraham that he should circumcise himself and all his generations. Now, maybe you think that as a Christian, this commandment does not apply to you. Okay, maybe it does not, but it certainly does apply for the house of Israel to this day. And you don't get to say that God is immoral for saying that. Otherwise, as Vincent Pancho said, you would be a heretic according to your own belief, which would result in you being not only a heretic but a hypocrite. Now, when we cite religious arguments for why circumcision is okay in our eyes, you don't get to say, well, you don't get to talk about religion. We just want to talk about if it's morality. Well, tell you what, dude, you don't have morality without appealing to some form of religious deity. Okay, you are not the arbiter of morality. You can appeal to some religious deity for your morality. Okay, but that would just make my morality as good as yours. So you don't get to tell me that your morality is superior to mine. If my morality tells me that the spiritual health of my child depends on me circumcising him as a baby, all right, so you think it's cosmetic? How do you know how God sees it? Do you think that God sees it as cosmetic? I don't think God would say such a thing if it were purely cosmetic. No, obviously, God sees it as spiritually important to the spiritual health of the baby. So if you had a spinal surgery in order to save your physical health, well, guess what? We have a surgery to save our spiritual health. Thank you.
So morality is just subjective then.
Just
There's really no universal, because as long as like, oh well, my higher power, whoever it may be, tells me to do whatever I want, whether it's I can commit murder, rape, fraud, embezzlement, just some examples. Oh, but my higher power said so, so it's fine. To say that those are just as good as someone helping the poor, not murdering and not stealing, it's totally ridiculous.
Well, I do want to say, wait, hold on. I do want to say that that is a separate argument, but the difference is that when it comes to religions, I don't think you ever heard a religious debate before between let's say somebody's a Jew or a Muslim or a Jew and a
Yeah, I've
Christian.
heard religious debates.
Well, the thing is that like we have different arguments to prove why the belief, let's say the Jewish God or the God of Abraham is just before all the other beliefs and gods between other religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, etc. So that, once again, that is a separate debate. It's not like we just say, we don't just look at something and we just say, well, God told us to, so we do that. Like, no, God provides us a specific reason why. We have old traditions why, etc., etc. And they're not just random justifications. We can prove their legitimacy using chains of transmission. And yeah, and honestly, man, to suggest that is the reality is very, very bogus. And you're going to say, well, morality is just subjective. How does that have anything to do with what it's being talked about? How?
Well, you had Dreamily. I'm sorry. Well, you had Dreamily over here saying, well, as long as that morality and ethics only comes from a higher being, okay, then it could be up for interpretation. Because as long as all I have to say is, I a higher being told me so to do that or whatever it may be, then it's absolutely fine.
Okay.
So I mean, there's thousands. I'm not done. There are thousands of religions all over the world. Who are you in a position to say that your religion is more correct or more just than all the other ones? Every religion has a case to say that their religion is the objective truth or like the main answer.
Okay. Well, I mean, once again, who am I to say that? I'm not one to say that. I'm not one to say that. That's what the Torah is for. That's why we have Rabban, and that's why we have Sefer HaKuzari. Sefer HaKuzari was a book written by Yehuda Halevi, for example, about the superiority of Judaism before all other religions, including Judaism, Christianity, including Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, etc. And listen, we can debate about that, but once again, this is a separate debate. That's not related to circumcision. What I'm saying is that you're asking who am I to say this? We have arguments for this, we have cases for this, and then we can debate the other cases of these different religions, and we can go around. But at the end of the day, we draw morality from a higher power because the higher power proves to us that his morality is completely just. We don't just follow every single thing that the higher power.
Was it just to let 6 million?
Hold on, guys.
Is it just?
Hold on. Hold on, both of you. Hold on. Keeks have been trying to key up for a while now. You guys have been taking turns. Both of you have had 3 opportunities to speak. So if Keeks would like to key up now and have Mike for a few minutes, you should let him do that.
Well, for me, like I was talking about how religion had nothing to do with it. Like in terms of morale, like you don't have to have a higher power to have a sense of morality. Like that just seems to me at least just an excuse. And if it is a spiritual thing, like I mean, I could get an earring and it's spiritual. It's still mutilation in any way. If you do it to a child, I feel we're responsible for that child to keep them safe. Your body is a temple. But I'm not a full-on Christian, but like at least for me, like how I see the Bible, is that they were written by different people, and people can be corruptible, and they have ulterior motives in the first place. So I tend to keep a lot of skepticism with the Bible in the first place. So just saying, it's read in a book doesn't mean I have to do it. For me, it's more of a guide. That's my general gist of the Bible, but it shouldn't be about religion. Is it mutilation, or is it something that is beneficial for your child? It has nothing to do with religion at all, in my opinion.
So, Blue Sailor, when I was appealing to a higher power for the case of morality, I was actually making the case that, as you said, morality is not subjective, it is objective. Ergo, why you must appeal to a higher power in order for morality to be objective in the first place. Now, once I appeal to a higher power for my morality, and then you appeal to a different higher power for your different morality, then we create a debate on whose higher power is actually true. Okay, and that's a different debate altogether, which I don't think that is the time and place for such a debate, but I assure you, us Jews are not afraid of such debate. In fact, in most cases, in fact, 100% of the cases that I have been as a Jew in such debate, I always come out on top, always humiliating my opponents, be them whatever religion or non-religion they are from. So if you want to have this debate with me, I will be glad.
I just want to go back to the thing I wanted to say earlier when I gave my time to the other person who was talking. The repeated argument, the baby will not remember this pain, therefore it's okay. What prevents anyone from giving someone a drug where you have memory loss and do all kinds of horrible shit to them using the same argument? Oh, they don't remember it. How the fuck does that logic work? That the baby doesn't remember it? Like, is Bill Cosby all right then because he gave those women's drugs that they don't remember what happened to them?
That wasn't the point of him saying he doesn't remember it. He was saying that there is pain, and the person responded with, he doesn't remember the pain, and nobody that he knows remembers the pain. It wasn't the part of remembering. It was the part of the pain.
If the argument is if you don't remember the pain, therefore it's all right, how can you not extend that to other scenarios?
So your brain remembers, even as an infant getting circumcised. That's your very first traumatic experience ever, and other than birth. So you get two back to back. So you have an extreme friggin' birth, and then all of a sudden they're mutilating you by taking your foreskin.
Well, I'd like to add to that. So I can't speak on behalf of infant males because I was circumcised around 3 or 4 years old. But me being 3 or 4 years old, I don't remember getting circumcised. I don't remember the pain. I just remember the topical ointments being applied to me twice a day for about a week. That's it. So I'm not saying there was no pain. I just don't remember the pain. I don't remember getting anesthesia. So that's where I'm at.
I just want to clarify the argument here. So when people say, like, when people that are pro-circumcision, when they say that the infant or the very young child does not remember the pain, we're not citing that as a justification for why we do circumcision. So whether you're a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian who decides to follow this pathway as well, our motivation to do it, I think, was laid out very well by Dreamly, or the reasons why we do it. But when we bring up the point to say that the infant doesn't remember the pain, that's an argument against not to justify the practice of circumcision, but rather to as a counter argument against those who say that there are lasting harmful effects. And of course, that's only one component of the argument, but it is arguing against the sort of the narrative that the infant is like permanently harmed by this psychologically in the long run. So over to you guys.
If I can jump in quick, I haven't spoken a moment, assuming I'm coming through clear. Sorry. I just want to say, right, so I get it. People say this to me all the time. Well, I don't remember anything. And I get it, right? If you don't remember it, arguably it didn't hurt you. Completely untrue for a number of reasons. First of all, I think it's already been mentioned, but this just isn't how we apply things, right? So if a woman gets raped and doesn't remember it, that doesn't make it morally okay, right? If you see a homeless person passed out on the street and you boot them in the ribs and they never know because they were so drunk they didn't feel it, still completely evil, right? So the ethics is not determined by whether the victim remembers the assault. That's just not how that works. And if I can key in on one thing, my mother's specialty was early childhood development. She worked high level in the government on this. She knew the science better than anybody. And the way that the human is, they're most vulnerable, most sensitive, most in every way gentle and vulnerable, right? This is obvious, right? I'm outside here. But so trauma is much exponentially more damaging the earlier it happens. And that's because when you're born, your brain is all fired up to make all these connections and learn about its environment. It's like a sponge. So love, right? What's supposed to happen is you're supposed to take your baby, wrap it in soft swaddling clothes, hold it, sing to it, read it, kiss it, hug it, touch it, give it milk, breastfeed it. That's what the baby's wanting and expecting and needing for a healthy development. And if you give it love and affection in early infancy, it will be enormously important to its long-term well-being. So I hate to tell you guys, from a scientific, medical, neurodevelopmental, and psychological and sociological point of view, circumcision is the most harmful thing you could ever do to your child, because you are sexually traumatizing them in the pre-verbal stage, at the earliest stage, at a time when they are wired to expect the opposite. Now, there's multiple problems with this, but the biggest one is it automatically violates the innate sense of trust that the infant has in its parents. This is incredibly grotesque because A, this should be the most obvious thing, right? A mother's love, a father's protection for his child. And so instead of being received into the loving arms of its family, it's strapped to a board and mutilated. And I'll get off the mic, but the problem with this is called pre-verbal abuse, by far the worst kind, because humans are what's called a narrative a narrative species. And what that means is we process trauma by telling ourselves stories about it and thinking about things verbally. It helps us process what's going on. Babies have not yet learned language, and they don't even have the context to understand the trauma that's being inflicted on them. So I know you think it's okay because you don't remember. I hate to tell you, scientifically, it's the opposite. Infant circumcision is basically perfectly designed to harm the child.
So, if you're finished, according to your psychological analysis, I am surely psychologically deformed in some way or form, and I have an issue trusting my parents.
What's the issue about? Like, what matter?
I mean, no, the issue is that I'm psychologically deformed and I have issues trusting my parents.
I don't think the issues trusting your parent thing was established as a ultimate it happens to everyone thing by what he was saying at all.
Well, I think that there are plenty of cases of people that didn't ever go circumcision and are still not cut, and they have issues with their parents.
That's because there's also adolescence to keep hormonal imbalance. You've got to keep that in mind. And there's a whole changing of the whole world now, especially with the world and the state it's in, and the state of the news, like the riots, COVID-19, economic imbalance. Those are different factors, social factors.
Assalamu alaikum.
There's always social factors to this. You could probably count social engineering as well, like how some people hate that there's a snowflake generation coming about.
Test. Do you hear me? Hello.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, sir, but please wait for your turn on the mic.
Yeah, I was just testing my mic. Sorry.
Sorry.
I think one is trying to speak, but I can barely hear this one guy.
What guy?
Yeah, his mic is extremely low.
How about now?
Who is this?
Is this better?
No, not you, Vindy. One.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, who? Sorry, who, Dreamland?
One.
Yeah, person.
Yeah, so Juan, whoever Juan is, please leave the room and rejoin. Turn up your volume, speak louder, put the mic closer to your mouth, etc. People can't hear you.
The reason why that normally happens when trust is not built is when there's no value. If you don't, that's generally how trust is not built, with no value.
But Vindy, we're actually talking about people supposedly losing trust of their parents due to circumcision, specifically.
Okay, I never heard of that. And the only way I can see it, like they talk about in like animals, well, it's different. It's castration with animals, but with since it's a living being, you could probably say that doing that causes some kind of hormonal difference, and that causes their mindset to change in a sense. Because
Hello,
there's
is it better
a
now?
saying going on.
Hello.
This is
Yes.
better, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Don't talk
Go
over
ahead.
other
Sorry.
people.
Yeah, continue, man. I was just
Yeah, I
testing
just
my
want to
mic.
clarify. I understand that you're trying to see if your mic is working, but interruption is never allowed. So you can't interrupt to check your mic or for any other reason.
Yeah, because there's that talking in like
Yeah,
veterinarians. They
sorry.
say like
Continue, man. Sorry, sir.
And so
they say
apologizing, also interrupting, but you'll get it.
yeah, because they say in veterinarians, it's castration. I mean, it's castration when it comes to like animals, but it's to do with the genitalia. But either way, they talk in veterinarians is like if you cut the balls off, the brains come back, and then they make a joke that it's about brain surgery. So that's the only way I could come with relation to that about circumcision and it causing a distrust value within relatives or guardianships.
So I know
There's
that.
some kind of hormonal imbalance.
Well, you see that's a good point that you raised. At in modern society, castration of animals seems to be
Yeah, it makes them
something that
docile.
we're okay with because we come up with reasons for why it is beneficial for the animals or for us humans or for the population of animals. We make up a whole bunch of reasons, and they're all arbitrary and subjective. And yet, my religion, which in modern society is deemed as primitive and stupid, actually sees makes no justification for the castration of any animal. It seems that it is a complete sin to castrate an animal. It is against the law of the Torah to castrate an animal. But my opponents would say that it is immoral to circumcise a child, while on the other hand, they will be sometimes okay with castrating an animal completely.
So I'll say that I know that rats, like humans, need comfort in order to stay alive. Like I forgot the guy who made the discovery, but if you take an eraser and put it against a rat, you can tickle it, but they laugh ultrasonically, so you have to slow it down. But the point I'm making
Is
is
anyone talking or is my connection?
the point I'm making is
Yeah, just leave and rejoin. If you can't hear anybody, just leave and rejoin. That'll fix the issue. Sorry.
the point I'm making is just like rats, humans also need love in order to grow and develop. And we've seen that with communist hospitals. They took all the mothers away, and the children. I forget the numbers, but it was like I think it was upwards of like 80% of the children, like, and I'm grouping this together, but died or had serious like social problems. And past that, to what Gallihan was saying, what we're doing whenever we're circumcising someone is the exact opposite of love and comfort. You're supposed to be set up in order to take in love and comfort, and then you're cutting off a piece of that, very small baby who has like no development in its brain and causing it serious pain.
Well, I think it's a really bad analogy to bring these communist hospitals in contrast to circumcision, because we're only talking about this one-time event that takes about 10 seconds, and as harmful and abusive as it seems, I'm sorry, there are no evidence for such ill effects on the development of people who underwent circumcision at a young age.
I don't understand. Oh, sorry, I thought you were finished.
So I'm sorry, this is a really bad analogy.
The point I'm making is the love and comfort, not the analogy of pain through social predication. I'm saying that they need love and comfort, or they will like face serious problems upwards to 80% of everything inside of that hospital.
I just don't get this argument. Like, it's a procedure that takes 10 seconds. Like, so the wound heals magically after the procedure takes place? Like it takes months until it's fully healed. There's excessive pain involved with the healing period. But you say it's just 10 seconds, so it's nothing. And the straw manner you did before, like some of your opponents think it's okay to castrate animals, but the people who follow the Torah think it's not. How does that justify saying, yeah, it's just 10 seconds, and after it's over, the baby feels no pain after the procedure? I just don't get that logic. Like, obviously, after you have a surgery, you're spending weeks and months in pain from the aftermath, from the healing period.
Yeah, if I can jump in on this point on two notes, I have an insanely high pain tolerance to the point that I've walking on two broken feet for weeks without realizing it. So my pain tolerance is so high, I've often had severe injuries and not even been aware of it. So when I had just a minor surgery on my chest, right, an area of flesh removed and some stitches, I thought it was going to be a cakewalk. When that anesthetic wore off, the pain was extreme and intense and very long lasting. So yeah, surgical, there is no minor surgery. And the area of my body that was amputated or operated on was infinitely less sensitive and pain receptive than the area in circumcision. So the pain is actually maximal. It's the most pain sensitive spot on the body. So the pain would be unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. And the healing process would be long and difficult and slow. It's not a small thing. It's not a minor thing. It's not a trivial part of the body. It's a critical part of the body, et cetera, et cetera. And the second thing I wanted to say about how harmful and traumatic this is at this age is not my own opinion. There's actually now scientific evidence that circumcision causes lifelong psychological, emotional, and sexual problems and dysfunction. So although I will admit that from a theological point of view, if your mind is entirely determined by your scripture, yeah, the scripture says circumcise your kid. No one is arguing that. However, if you care about the objective well-being of your child, you are hurting that child.
Okay, so there are a few points I feel like I need to respond to. Fingerfaust, when I said that some of my opponents are in favor of animal castration, that was not um, a straw man, because I was using it to a completely different point entirely. Not talking about the 10-second thing. I wasn't talking to a counselor with his communist hospital example. You have completely conflated 2 points that I was making at two different times to two different counter arguments. So please don't do that. As for 10 seconds, well, all right, fine. It takes more than 10 seconds to heal, but it does not take months. Perhaps it takes like a week or two. Not that it makes such a huge difference, I know. And yet, it is not a good reason enough to come and bring the example of communist hospitals against circumcision, because with all due respect, Jewish parents don't uh, or do give the necessary warmth and love to their children, as I have received from my parents, and as all, I mean, not all, but as society goes, as a society normally is, as all Jews receive from their parents. And
Sorry to interrupt, but I did not
there is no
conflate it
sorry,
with
but
the communist
there is no
hospital.
sorry, there is no sorry.
Guys,
I'm
listen,
very
I've
sorry,
explained
but
this repeatedly. I don't
I'm
care if you're
very
sorry.
sorry, but
Shut your absolute mouth, you dipshit, okay? Everybody read the rules. I've explained this repeatedly. There is no interruption. There's no quick interruption. If you start your sentence with, I'm sorry to interrupt, then you're interrupting. You're breaking the rules. Everybody go to the rules channel and read them. I am sick of repeating this. If you have a problem with what someone is saying or they're mischaracterizing your argument, you will do them the courtesy of allowing them to finish their point. Then you may respond and point out their mistake. Anyone who interrupts in this way is to be instantly muted and not unmuted until they reply in writing that they have understood and promised to follow the rules, okay? This has been put in general chat. Everybody read it. It's put in the rules chat. Everybody read it, okay? I'm sick of repeating myself.
Okay, so then to go around and to say that because of this communist hospital experiment or evidence that we have from it, it truly means that Jewish kids, for this example, all suffer from some underlying psychological issue, and because they have underwent some trauma in their early childhood or early infancy. I don't think that's true. I mean, some people would say that Ashkenazi Jews have some tendency for psychological issues. Well, maybe they do, but it can't be shown as being related to circumcision, because on the other hand, Sephardi Jews don't really suffer from the same psychological issues, yet they undergo the same circumcision at the same age and at the same rate. So no, I think it does come down to, yeah, God said so, and all morality will eventually have to appeal to a higher power. And if you feel your higher power is better than mine, then please go ahead and try. Go ahead and try to prove that.
I'd just like to point out that you're basically saying science is science, and I don't really care as long as there's a deity backing my beliefs.
I am basically saying in a way that the scientific community has changed its mind numerous times. Um, One day they find that, I don't know, that the that matter is all there is, and now they're starting to talk about quantum physics, where maybe there is an underlying energetical um, substructure to matter, and there are things beyond matter in a way. So science keeps changing its mind. Okay, so today they believe in in their psychological theories. Well, in a week they can come up with a different theory altogether. So no, I'm sorry, I'm not putting my eggs in what the scientific mainstream has to say, because they change their mind every week.
The thing with that though is that you're talking about theoretical physics rather than what's been recorded via psychological behaviors. You might not see that you are somehow mentally complicated in some way because of the circumcision. Nobody ever knows. Like, I mean, like with my grandfather, he had Alzheimer's. He didn't even know what fucking planet he was on. Like you can't tell yourself unless you've actually been tested on. So just saying that science changes, sure, science changes every day, but this has been, it's been recorded, it's been studied quite a bit. So to tell me that you won't go with science and just go with a deity, it just means that it just seems very what's the word?
Stupid.
No, I would say closed-minded. I would never say
closed-minded.
I would never say stupid, because nobody is ever like fully stupid unless they have some sort of mental problem. And even then, like, you can be closed-minded either way.
So again, if anybody else wants to talk, I will yield the mic. But
I actually would like to jump in quick. Thank you for offering that. I appreciate that, Dreamly. Again, I want to reiterate how much I would like to debate you in particular, but anyone in general on this topic that you brought up many times, Dreamly. So many religious people think that there's only two possibilities, that there is either just subjective and therefore meaningless cultural morality that is basically just opinion, like you like chocolate, I like vanilla, or you have to be fanatically enslaved to a scripture, and if you don't do that, you have no leg to stand on. This is a complete false dichotomy. It's not even remotely true. It is not necessary to have a scripture to have an ethics. Scripture can be unethical. And also, my morality, despite the fact that it doesn't actually derive primarily or fundamentally from scripture, is not in any way subjective, right, in my opinion, or at least it's not arbitrary in any way, right? It's reasonable, it's logical, I can explain it, I can defend it, and I don't need a Torah to do so. And to be honest, when the Torah goes against my ethics, I'm morally obligated to go against the Torah. So if the Torah says, if you see a woman cheating on her husband, you should stone her to death, I am not morally permitted to do that. And if I do, I am a murderer. And that is a very unethical thing, because it's actually her own consensual adult sexual behavior that she's engaging in. And although I agree that adultery is highly unethical, the scripture does not give me the right to do that, right? So it's actually extremely important to have a moral understanding that is actually not derived entirely from a book, because otherwise you are basically a robot who has been programmed, and everything will then depend on, that programming. But all I'm saying is it's not the case that as soon as you lose the Torah, you're just lost in the sea of just meaningless opinion. I actually have a bedrock, rock solid ethics that doesn't depend on God, but fortunately completely agrees with Jesus Christ.
I have a question. Do you complete? So you believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
I believe in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, the Holy Ghost, that is my intercessor with him, and the creator of heaven and earth.
All right. Okay. So the thing is that nobody has ever said, right? Like, I believe that ethics depend on God. I do, because God is the creator of all things, so therefore he has created this as well. And therefore we must depend on him for these things. I'm not saying that like an atheist can't be moral, for example. Like, an atheist, because there are things that are naturally built into us, which make us reluctant to do certain things that we find immoral. So such as like if I was an atheist, right, and I was given a gun and said, just kill this baby. Like, I wouldn't do it even if I was an atheist, because it's built into me. The thing is that why do you think that why do you think, for example, now let's say let's say there were Jews living before Christ, for example, do you think that those Jews were immoral to stone people to death for things such as adultery? Adultery.
That's a somewhat separate question, but yeah, that falls very, very far short of my moral standards. That's not the moral standard I would have imposed in that time or now. That doesn't comply with my ethics. I just want to say one thing, though. I'll concede that in my theology or my belief, it is ultimately God who is the source of our knowledge of good and evil, right? This is through the conscience. So the conscience is your capacity for empathy, and your capacity for empathy. This is now a broader topic about my moral system, which we'll do another event to explain. But empathy allows you to understand that other beings have an internal subjectivity and feelings, such as pleasure and pain, that are equivalent to your own. And just as you know the moral significance of yourself, empathy allows you to understand the moral significance of others. Now, normally and hopefully, that develops into its positive moral dimension, which is called compassion. Compassion is feeling pleasure at the pleasure of other beings, happiness for the happiness of other beings, sadness for the sadness of other beings, pain when you see other beings in pain. That's called being good, right? And that's what God put in you. Christians call the conscience the vicar of Christ in you, right? So when you feel bad about sin, that's essentially Christ or the Holy Ghost inside you, urging you, right? God gave you this inner light, this lamp. That's why a mother should instinctively revolt. A father should fight to the death to protect his son from circumcision, because that is what the conscience that God gave us demands.
And yet,
Well,
on
actually,
and yet
I
on
want
some
to wait.
level, you
Hold on.
believe that
Wait,
that
Dreamly.
that Jesus, the creator of all
Someone else
things,
is trying to speak dreamily, please. I'm not sure.
Okay, hold on. The thing is, I mean, back then that would make you a heretic. You understand that, right? Like, what makes you supposedly, because you believe in a supreme being that created the universe, and that you believe that he ordered the people to do these things. Now, I don't understand how you believe that you're somehow above the supreme creator of the universe, and you still proclaim yourself as a normal Christian, even though that would make you a heretic. Secondly, Galahad, that the idea that Jesus has put into, or God, whatever the creator is in your eyes, has put into the instinct to reluctant to not, have your child circumcised is a very strange argument, because no Jewish parent, no normal Jewish, like Orthodox Jew would ever have like a word circumcised. An argument just based on your own view of the world, on your own opinion, as opposed to observing, observing certain things around you. Now, I said, certain things like, somebody would hand you a gun. If you're an atheist, somebody would hand you a gun, and you say, kill this baby. You still wouldn't do it because, that is a thing built into you. But circumcision does not fall within that range.
Okay, so I think that was addressed to me, so I'll take the opportunity. So, in reality, by definition, according to the English language, circumcision is, in addition to whatever else it may be, it certainly is sexual abuse. It is forced amputation. It is involuntary torture. It is all of these. Any healthy, moral person revolts against these ideas. Unfortunately, there is a well-known process which is called the intergenerational cycle of abuse. What this means is that when you are abused, especially in a pre-verbal stage, especially sexually, and especially at a young age, parents, This destroys your normal development of empathy, compassion, and morality. This is, in my opinion, precisely the purpose of circumcision, to shatter the innate goodness of people by traumatizing them in their most vulnerable state and inflicting that traumatization to neighbors. Everything I said is understood science with regards to all other forms of preverbal sexual abuse, and there's nothing different about circumcision, except that, in my opinion, it's actually even worse than most kinds of other sexual abuse, because most other kinds of sexual abuse don't amputate parts of the body that can't be. And this is literally torture, right? So what makes it torture? Most nerve dense spots in the body. Tongue do? They put bamboo splinters under your fingernails. Why? Because it hurts like a motherfucker. Why? Because of how many nerves there are. There's more nerves in that part of the baby's penis than under your fingernails. It's literally torture. That's why a circumstraint is a. And yes, the reason that Jews don't feel this revulsion is because they've been suffering intergenerational abuse for thousands.
Well,
hold on. You said you said it's sexual abuse. So you're saying the parents have been doing sexual abuse. And second, but when it comes to, let's say, parents cleaning their child's nappy, or if something is wrong with the penis, they will take it to a doctor, and the doctor does something to it, and they feel pain. Would you say that's sexual abuse? That's not how we define sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is when we intend to, with a desire or something like this, not something that's done as a surgery. So I don't. You're conflating two different things.
So I'm sorry, but I believe that was addressed to me, and I believe the gentleman was done. So I want to clarify. I say it's sexual abuse. I understand it's of a different nature and with a different motivation. Obviously, what I'm saying though is it is abuse. Like I'm these are linguistic terms. Right? Obviously, that part of the body is a sexual organ. So when you abuse that sexual organ, it is by definition sexual abuse. And the motivation is not sexual. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's obviously not. Nobody would think that. That would be an absurd thing to think. That's not my dictionary, and the way English language is, it literally is what I said, right? But right, it's a different motivation, but the effect is even worse, in my opinion, in many cases. Hold on, I'm not quite finished yet. The second thing I wanted to reply to was, what if there was a legitimate medical reason? Then nothing I'm saying applies, right? Because the whole ethic I'm saying is unnecessary surgeries on healthy body parts are perfectly ethical, and it would be unethical not to do them, right? So if the child required that surgery, of course it would be 100% ethical to do it. The reason it's so unethical is precisely because there is no medical reason.
Yeah, lots of people mind that when you say sexual abuse, it straight away comes up, something that can be is criminalized. You can go to prison for this. A lot of people think of this when you say sexual abuse. They don't think, okay, sexual organ and some sort of abuse. This is not generally how they see it, and it's not abuse anyway. There's no, how is it abuse? There's foreskin.
Yeah, and I understand your confusion, and I'm glad you reminded me to clarify my statement so it wasn't misunderstood what I meant. I just want to remind you guys that there is a recorded event channel that goes along with this. I'm going to post definitions from the dictionary and other sources that explain what I'm saying, because this is not actually I'm here, but when I labeled it the way I did, that's actually a dictionary definition, right? So that's not my personal opinion. That's just what the English language confirms. And I'll show that, right? So go look at Rec Event. I'm just going to post some dictionary definition, and it will make it clear that what I said is literally true. Right? That's what I want to say. As for criminalization, I would, in terms of social policy, I would declare a total blanket amnesty on all future events of this nature would absolutely be criminalized in my ideal world. And anyone who does this should absolutely go to jail, right? But we understand that there are powerful long-term cultural, historical, theological reasons why this is happening. And we understand that neither Jews nor Muslims are going to agree with this or comply with this. What they're doing is morally criminal and should be legally criminalized, absolutely.
Circumcisions done over here in the West have nothing to do with religion. It's just being not forced on the parents, but the parents are given the option, pay for it, and have the baby circumcised. Religion's not even in the topic.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to shut everybody up with that, but it's just the truth. Religion has nothing to do with the amount of circumcisions that are going on right now.
Well, and that's a
It
good
does.
point, Paulie. And one of the strangest things is that most of the world does not practice this custom, right? So the vast majority of Europe, the vast majority of Scandinavia, Denmark, France, Germany, all over the world, this practice almost is. It's obviously rife in the Islamic world for obvious reasons. It's rife among the Jewish community. America is a major outlier in that this is commonly practiced at all, and we should definitely question that. And why that is, but and sadly, many Christians partake in this, and that's a real shame.
Honestly, I think at least in the U.S. Is less religious. It's more about so if you make the penis less sensitive, you won't masturbate as much, is what they're thinking was. Why they do it in America for non-religious.
Actually, that's not true. It's done for looking like dad or parental rights or cosmetic procedures. So it's like, oh well, the husband or like my dad was circumcised, so it's circumcised. That's why it's basically it's like a do it like look like daddy argument. It's actually the material reason. I mean, I don't know about any of you guys who are circumcised. If you are, do you ever compare your penis with your dad? Do you have like penis comparison parties? Not.
Bro.
My dad, my boys aren't.
But I was just making a point. Yeah, like it never happens. I'm like, all right, not let's compare our penises.
Yeah, that's all.
That's the main question.
It also creates for human rights. So if you went out like a 20-year-old and said, hey, we're gonna forcibly cut it, they would fight you and call the cops on you, and you'd probably go to jail. But for some reason, it's okay to do that for very young, and that is immoral.
Parents are full right to do whatever they want with it. Parents are full right to fundamental. Like if they can abort their child, and the mother could do this to the child, whatever takes place after. And a mother is in the future of the child in terms of what education, in terms of what, in terms of how he looks. So she's in control of all these things. Why isn't she in control over his education and all at the same time in terms of circumcision, which is a religious practice? There's no issue with that.
As far
go ahead. Oh, sure. Yeah, so to address that, I think that pretty clear difference between deciding where your kid is going to go to school, like not being fucked with, or cutting off part of a person's body. When you're like, your parents can say, oh, I think you should go to this school, or like encourage your kids to go to this. I don't think that's the same as like cutting off. And if you did that to a 20-year-old, they would fight you, and it would be a horrible, it would be awful to do that to someone that age.
And as far as I'm concerned, as a parent's job is more to guide your child and protect your child versus just doing some arbitrary religious reason.
Yeah, from your worldview, it would be it's going to be something minor or something that shouldn't be done. From their worldview, it's something important. So when they're doing it to their child, I don't see any. I've been circumcised. Now I don't have any issue with my penis. So what's the big deal? Like they're making a big deal out of pretty much nothing.
Well, the thing with that is that you've never grown up with a foreskin in the first place, so you don't know what you've had. So I don't believe you can fully say that, oh, I'm perfectly fine, therefore I can mutilate my child. It doesn't seem like a fair argument.
And also,
I'm saying, what's the issue? Like, if my living standard is good with my penis, then and there's also no issue with many other people's penises in terms of. So what's the issue? Like, okay, you're saying just that they could have felt much better, they could enjoy them. Are these the basic arguments? Like, it's just like which chocolate's better?
Well,
caramel's better, white chocolate's better. Is that
how do you even establish an argument that all of these men's penises are all right in a culture where everything is where it's shameful
Whoever
to
has mic
say my
spam or
penis is
whoever has
not
their mic open, please close it. If I'm over talking, I don't hear anybody. I'm not doing it. I just wanted to point out that I have now the dictionary of 3 words: sexual abuse and mutilation. And anybody who reads these definitions understand that linguistically, circumcision is sexual abuse and sexual mutilation by definition. And no, Aziz, this is not going to change with different dictionaries. As you can see, I did indeed use the dictionary I believe you recommended. I could use any dictionary and heard the same.
I think. I think someone made an important point that I think a lot of people think. So because I had it done, I'm okay with it. What if other people aren't okay with it? I think there's plenty of people that if you took them, you know, if you took like someone who's older, they would very much object to that. I think, you know, having something okay with one person doesn't mean that you can do it to all.
Yes, and so we addressed this earlier for someone who might have joined. The person who did the formal debate at the beginning was not me. He was a victim of this process, and he told us about how he broke down and wept, how profoundly wounded he is. I mean, I posted articles about people who have either committed suicide or contemplated suicide as a result of this process. So although it's wonderful that you're not one of those people who is struggling to that extent, there are countless people who have killed themselves or have greatly regretted this. And as it was already pointed out, you can't know what you never had it. So your perception that you're totally fine is great because your standard of normal is what it is, right? So it's like, imagine if you never met a woman and so you never knew how happy you would be if you were married. And you say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm single. I'm totally fine. But then when you got married, you say, holy crap, now that I know what marriage and a wife is, right? So you would say, well, no, I never had a wife. I'm totally fine. Yeah, you're quote unquote fine. That doesn't mean you're not deprived of a much greater level of happiness that you're simply unaware of, right? Hold on. So we had 2 perspectives today, right? 2 people who share exactly the same perspective. One was Carter, who was a victim of this torture, and myself, who fortunately thank the FA. And so I am uncut, he was cut. We have exactly the same views, and we feel good. It's just that he was not right. He can tell it doesn't work right, et cetera, and so he suffers that. I can tell what I have. I can see what it does. I can tell what I would be losing because, unlike you, I do know what I have. And therefore, I know what you've lost in a way that you can't. And whether that's a good thing or not, it's a silver lining, I guess, that you don't know how much you've been deprived of, but that's not an excuse.
Yeah, I think it's really hilarious that a person would, kill themselves over having, circumcision. Just on the basis
I'm sorry, I got to interject. That's not hilarious in any way, shape, or form, and that's very offensive and distasteful thing to say. Please, that with our family vibe or our rules, we don't make light of suicide. Okay, so don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not making light of suicide. I'm saying the reason itself.
Sure, you said it's hilarious that they commit suicide more than making light of it. Okay, listen, I'm telling you, you're out of line. Get in line.
Anyhow. You said sexual abuse, according to Cambridge Dictionary, that's not the definition. It says the act of having sex with one person or someone who is mentally ill against a person's wishes or without that person's agreement. So that's the actual definition.
I provided definitions of mutilation, sexual abuse. Anyone who reads them can see why they all apply to circumcision.
The thing about sexual assault is that it doesn't have to be, sex has to be enacted. It's if you actually touch the genitalia in any way, shape, or form, or if you were to torture somebody in a sexual manner or their genitalia.
And this might be a good time for me to remind everyone of something. A, this is not our first event on this, so I'm now going to post in both the recorded and the general chat our previous event called the Great Roundtable Circumcision Debate. I highly encourage anyone with an interest in this topic to listen to that entire debate. It was also a great one. And secondarily, I would like to remind everyone we actually have a channel in the server called Circumcision, which has been there for a long time. You need, I believe, the science role to unlock that channel. But if you're interested, please go there. You'll find many, many sources, much information, and an ongoing debate. So I just wanted to throw those things out, and I'll remind that in the record.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up. We've been going for 2 hours now, and I do have an errand to run. So if it's cool with you guys, I think we can move this up to one of the voice chats, Roundtable 1 or so.
Yeah, and just before we do, thank you very much, Merlin, for recording. Thank you to everybody for attending and participating. Obviously, you can all do this, but I don't hate anybody or any group of people. It's not about that whatsoever. I respect everybody, love everybody, right? So let's make that clear. That being said, also there's going to be another special event beginning in 23 minutes about research chemicals with our expert on that subject by the name of Brett. It'll be right here in the same room in exactly 20 minutes. That being said, we will jump out of this room. Merlin, you want to just give us our closing credits?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us at, you can Google us, Roundtable Discord. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, and Facebook. We have our own website as well, the roundtablediscordserver.com. And yeah, please join us. Check out our stream on YouTube live when we do this. We have the server link right there. We would love to hear from you. So with that being said, thank you for joining us, and let's jump up to Roundtable 1 and continue our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. God bless. Much love. See you up there.